Hello, my name is Joshua Gilliland. I'm one of the founding attorneys of the Legal Geeks. We are at the end of Skeleton Crew, and with me is retired Judge Matthew Sciarrino for us to discuss the treasure trove of issues from this series and the final episode. Your Honor, how did you enjoy Skeleton Crew?
It was a very, very good series. And the other, I think, very important fact is this is a series that the youth of America can enjoy. This was definitely geared to the younger Star Wars fan. And while those of us that have grown up on Star Wars and everything Star Wars could equally enjoy all of its nuances and all of the Easter eggs, you really could almost pick up this show without having any knowledge of Star Wars, and hopefully, people will find though. I've seen some things that the ratings weren't as good as they would like, but I think that word of mouth will go out there that this was a series that is worth watching, that it's complete. It had a beginning, middle, and an end, and it's something that really could be picked up by young Padawans and enjoy uh, all of that the Star Wars universe has.
I I agree it is super family friendly, much like the original of people from the ages of 5 to 90 could sit down and watch it together and have a good time, which is what I look for in Star Wars. I also have seen that it's currently ranked #1 on Disney Plus, so I have hope that there are people who are binge watching it all at once. I come from the school of thought of, again, being a Gen Xer to like weekly television programming and we have something to watch each week. There are those younger than me that like having something that they binge all at once. One's not better than the other, it's just different. But I think a lot of the younger folks who don't remember the good old days of the 80s because they weren't around, like being able to stream something all at once. That's their thing. That's what they're used to, and it's different than my experience because I'm grateful to have a weekly television show.
And
Uh,
it has its pros and cons, both methods. And there are certainly shows that I've binged that I very much enjoyed binging, and I don't know if I would have liked them as much if I watched them week to week. Um, but there certainly is a large segment of people that wait for the show to end to see if the ending holds up, and then if they hear that the ending holds up, they will dive in. Because the other reality, which is a good reality, is that there is a lot of really good television out there. There's some bad television, of course, too, but there's really a lot of good television out there. And there's not enough time in the day to watch it all. So people are a little bit choosier of the services that they purchase and the shows that are on those services that they will watch. And I think that this will find a very, very broad audience because the commentary, unlike a lot of sports programs, has been overwhelmingly favorable. The ratings on all of those services that rate such things have been very, very favorable. So I think people will find this show.
I agree. And I think the numbers will reflect that eventually, or if this weekend is an indication, people are hanging out at home and watching it. I I binged the first half uh on Saturday afternoon, evening, over dinner time. And like that was it's like, oh, this is nice. But it's tough for me to just watch like 8 episodes in a row. I kind of like I have other things to do too. So, but let's get into the some of the first issues that we have. In a true Flash Gordon serial homage, we each episode ends with a cliffhanger, and I think that's cool. And so we pick up with Jod brandishing his lightsaber towards the parents, where he plays the game of he's a Republic emissary, and he carries that through in giving the droids directions and ultimately meeting the supervisor. Is this false imprisonment of a Republic emissary by Jod, and what uh, oddities does that include if it is? What's your thoughts?
I think he is definitely impersonating a officer of the Republic. He also then almost tries to say that he's a Jedi to um, the highest governmental official on the Mint Planet, um, and he does definitely effectively use the droids to uh, imprison and force various characters to either house arrest or arrest in the facility, depending on their location.
Well said, Your Honor. Also joining us is our good friend Chris. Chris, thanks for jumping on to uh, share your thoughts and feelings about this episode of Skeleton Crew. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me. It's always a pleasure to be here.
Like we would go
Chris,
without you. So again, glad you could jump in. Uh, we were just sharing our thoughts on the series, kind of big picture, and starting our analysis with some false imprisonment. But just like, what's your how the series make you feel?
So I really enjoyed the 80s aspect of it. I think it was ever present with the kids being here the heroes and more competent than their parents in that regard. Although they gave at least Wendell Wynn's dad some good moments there at the end, where you could see it made him feel like a kid again. Um, and I thought it was very interesting. People were always talking about like, is there going to be a cameo? Who's the big character that's going to show up at the end? I was really happy that uh, it didn't, even though it connects to the larger Star Wars universe. It's always nice to have a story that doesn't have to rely on previous knowledge of what comes before it.
and you clearly just hit the nail on the head that Wim's dad would have his 80s movie uh, ch- chance to rise to the occasion and shine. You called that out on the last podcast that that was your thoughts as to what one of the main things that would happen in this episode, and I think that premonition clearly.
Thank you. And so did Farah, but it was different. And we can latter half we can get to it. But I was glad to see Wendell have his George McFly moment and just never doubt the 80s dad on a redemption arc. Just, good things are going to happen. But we also got Farah as the single mom, also on a not necessarily redemption, but more personal growth. Because she had more engagement with her daughter. But it was different. But both parents have really nice arcs. So pivoting to the beginning, we have the droids keeping an eye on our hero youth, and the droids are supposed to report back to Jod. This really annoyed me from the like you're not asking for ID, you're taking a lot on faith. So I thought that was a little weird, but it raises the question, do we have an issue of false imprisonment, even though the kids are at home and but you have eavesdropping droids and Your Honor, what do you think?
As they were not free to leave, they were clearly under some kind of house arrest, and their liberty was was certainly curtailed, and it was justifiable as really, even though the droids felt that they had a legal authority to act in that manner, they really did. They were taking orders from someone that was not authorized to give those orders. It wasn't like the supervisor put the kids under house arrest. So this, to me, is a clear case of false imprisonment.
Chris, do you have any thoughts on the droids holding the kids at home, and the legal ramifications of that?
Yeah, I would have to agree that with Gesturino, because you have that situation where it builds off of the false impersonation that Jod did, and that it's sort of fruit of the poisonous tree. All the bad acts come from that, and also um, not only are they, confined to their homes, but they're all their communication is being spied upon and reported back to
Yeah, and that's just creepy and also highlights the importance of having action figures. Uh,
them.
that was so good. I mean, so I started a rewatch last night, and Wim does play with action figures in the first episode, so it's a nice callback for him thinking on his feet, to be able to, say like, "Oh, Princess Fur," and it's just like, he used the word princess. The droid is not that analytical in reading the room, doesn't understand being human and playing with toys. But man, again, our hero boy does a wonderful job.
That
Uh,
that gave me great Spaceballs callback.
yeah,
Yeah, that as I loved it playing with the action figures. Clearly, I collect them and still have a great collection of them. But when he was playing with them, I just kept thinking of the scene in Spaceballs where he was playing with the figures. What a big helmet you have. So to me, it triggered that moment.
yes, and I wonder if the writers felt that, if they, again, it's
If they're
effectively,
out of our generation, they had to have.
yeah. There's just no way around it. It's again, it's just beautiful. And it also, those toys look old, which also highlights what the society on At Attin must be like, that you have generational toys and generational goods being handed down over time, meaning that, for perhaps 1,000 years, there were Jedi toys,
Mhm.
which would make sense. It's like the little green army men. So this is where we can share some legal analysis on continuity of government. Did the supervisor have a legal authority to go on? If he or it, droids and gender's always been a little weird, but if the supervisor did get Order 66, which meant that he'd been listening in for decades or centuries, and if they had been cut off for centuries, okay. How much had they heard since Order 66, if anything? Is the satellite network to knock out incoming ships, are they, was he listening on subspace to what was being broadcast to the galaxy for, let's just say, 1,000 years? Opens up some entire questions of, was the droid right to just keep doing what it was programmed to do and running a mint? And Your Honor, your thoughts on this suburbia dropped on a planet that's just been mining for gold for 1,000 years?
My opinions of the changed with the last episode because when Fern's mom and Fern go up to see the supervisor, it's not like she was surprised that the supervisor was a non-human entity. She clearly knew that this was a droid overlord of sorts and seemed to have accepted that. And so my opinion is that that society accepted the fact that an AI intelligence was overseeing their society. So I saw it more as this is the type of government that the people of the Mint Planet accepted as their legal authority over them. And like you, I'm very curious as to how much eavesdropping happened after Order 66. Was he aware of the Empire, the Emperor? Was he aware of the rebels and their attempts to overthrow the Empire? Or was the Order 66 and possibly even Kenobi's message that was sent out as well for the Jedi's to stay away, that might have been the triggering of some kind of mechanism sealed off the rest of the galaxy from the Mint and the Mint from the rest of the galaxy. And I think that might be answered in season two if there is a season two. But I think he was a legitimate authority.
Chris, your thoughts?
Yeah, I would have to agree that the supervisor is some kind of legitimate authority. And, previously I had thought that since they were referring to the Republic and the old Republic in the same way, that it made me think, okay, they hadn't had contact with the galaxy in 1,000 years. But now, the fact that they were continuously producing more and more old Republic batteries, maybe Palpatine knew of this mint and would go and collect during the time of the Empire, and maybe that's how he funded both the Death Stars, you know. And maybe this is a situation where Thrawn will come and get the mint, and that's how he funds his army, or how the First Order funds theirs, because they just pop out of nowhere. They have to get funding from somewhere. Um, so I think it's still a legitimate authority, especially if it's acting. If it was never told to stop, it would just keep going until an emissary would come in, take it.
It's I have many thoughts, and it's like logic tree analysis of when was the last time there was a pickup? Was it 500 years ago, or was it during Death Star 2 construction? Having that much money introduced into the economy could cause inflation, if not hyperinflation.
Hmm.
So it's we're going to need a wheelbarrow of all those gold coins in order to buy a loaf of bread. And is it you don't want that to happen? Or is this truly like government bureaucracy? Did the Republic forget that they had this like 400 years ago? And
Hmm.
they've just been doing their thing and listening. And by the time Palpatine comes to power, he didn't know about it. Like we could have that situation of they literally did not know, and no one's done a money run to At Attin since the High Republic era. I mean, like it could be that situation of it's like the Japanese soldiers living in the mountains, not knowing a surrender order was given. Like they're just out there. Or the going to our Civil War, the CSS Shenandoah was there. It was a Confederate warship that was disguised as a commercial vessel that then could open gun ports and go out and take prizes of war. And they were up harassing whalers after the Civil War ended because it's not like they had wireless radios to get communication. So those guys were all super freaked out that whoops, we've been pirates because our side surrendered and we didn't know that. So
Hmm.
it's like, do we need that for the continuity of the story? No, but it's fun for people like us to go, how long have they just been doing their thing? Like, and just we're just going to keep mining for gold. How much gold is there to mine? Do they
And
move?
they said they had over 1,100 volts.
Yeah, that's a lot.
And
That
they were big vaults.
Hmm.
yeah. How long does it take to mine one of those? Times it by 1,100. Had there ever been a pick? Well, from what the supervisor says, it sounds like there had been at least one pickup, but time is unknown. The other thing for uh since you both read Star Wars books and comics more so than I don't read Star Wars books. I don't have the bandwidth for that kind of reading, but I have read the comics. Has there been any other point in galactic history where the Republic said that the Jedi were traitors, knowing that we don't have a full
Yeah,
Uh,
other than in the old Republic times, where clearly there were periods where the Sith uh, Empire was in charge of the majority of the galaxy. So in the old Republic, when the Sith was in control, I would say that they probably considered the Jedis to be traitors. But from the High Republic era onward, the Jedi were the peacekeepers and the law and order types.
Yeah.
okay, so it raises the issue of, yeah, that probably was Order 66 was the last thing they heard. Uh, but again, it's seeing that control room covered in dust and they just haven't had people working in there. Uh,
Yeah, it's clearly been closed for a very, very long time, and I'm led. My belief is that there hadn't been a pickup really since the High Republic. I have to think that the Emperor was unaware of the planet and the Mint. Otherwise, I can't see him not using uh, that planet the way he used everything else in the galaxy. Um, the fact that he was unaware of it is also a big issue uh, because between his knowledge of the Linking Clan and his ability to get visions in the Force, it's kind of hard to believe that he wouldn't be aware of it. But like everything else, in the Star Wars universe, and when we first saw New Hope, which later became a New Hope. It was just Star Wars in the beginning. Uh, no one, including George Lucas, knew that Leia and Luke were brother and sister. There are things in the Star Wars universe that line up perfectly, and that's fine. They sometimes get retcon down the road, and I'm happy to see them do that with this at some point or another.
Chris, your thoughts?
Yeah, I had to agree with the judge there. I think that they're definitely going to have to. Well, actually, I don't think they have to, right? Sometimes, you don't explain things in Star Wars, and that's okay. Not everything needs to be explained, like where, a certain scoundrel's dice comes from. But I
And that gives
think,
us stuff to talk about.
yeah. But I do think that they could do like a book series or a comic series on all those worlds if they wanted to do some backstory, because I think there is plenty of potential there.
Or how some of those worlds fell
Yeah,
and why they fell. Because the, was it at Atrin?
yeah.
There's no shell of a supervisor in there like that, or if there was, it's long gone. Uh, no, Grant, we're kind of jumping ahead, but I say the supervisor obviously reminded me of 2001 with HAL 9000.
Hmm.
It also reminded me of Master Control from Tron, like in the voice and also just kind of the throne room area where he could be seen, and clearly Wizard of Oz references as well. Did Judge, we're of similar vintages. Did you get the Tron feeling as well? Or am I alone with that one?
No, the voice is, part of it. It's kind of the British voice, gives you the Doctor Who
Mhm.
vibes but yes, I kind of got the same kind of Tron overseer type of feel to it, and from the beginning, I kind of got a the Wizard of Oz type of feel, which I think whoever programmed supervisor to begin with probably was in that realm. Want to give a wizard type of um, leader to planet.
So one of the things I started thinking about from a historical aspect is when we have colonies forming in what would become the United States, they have a charter. It's the Puritan dilemma with John Winthrop that they come to North America with a charter in hand or a compact, and they're supposed to be doing things for England. And since they're remote, 3,000 miles away, we turn into a different country. Like, and you see that also in, say, like Babylon 5 with Mars rising up to become its own independent nation state. Dropping in prefab homes with a droid supervisor, I think is a way to mitigate that because everyone who's going is signing on to go. So, like, they're in that Massachusetts Bay Colony type compact of we're all going and we're starting a new job that's going to be generational. The issue is their descendants are following in line with decisions that the parents made. And that is itself the nature of, say, immigration and your forebears made a decision. But the issue is they're working for the same thing that their parents or great grandparents worked for as well. And that just seems surreal that you have a generational compact taking place where your kids and grandkids are going to be taking an assessment test for the artificial intelligence to make a decision on what their job will be. And it's stable and it's worked on this planet for 1,000 years. Did either of you get that feeling? See any historical comparisons? And Chris, again, this is from the hip. You can say, "Nope, I didn't think that way." You're crazy, man, and like that's a legitimate position. But did you get any of those vibes?
I didn't even think to consider those vibes. I was just looking at the implications of in universe having this kind of planet going, in the past, but also just going forward in future stories. Um, and sort of thinking about like, okay, where are these kids going to be in the future? Like, is Wim going to be a New Republic pilot? Or, and I was like, my head canon is he shows up on Exegol. He's one of the ships in the Citizens Fleet.
Oh yeah, I totally see that too. Because he would be what in his 40s by the time that happened, late 30s,
Yep.
early 40s. Your Honor, did you have again? You're also a history nerd. Did you get any of those vibes?
I definitely got the West Indy type charter vibe to it, but I also got from the old Knights of the Old Republic video games the vibe of the CorpSec um, office and the CorpSec representative. One of the first things you did when you visited a planet in those games was you had to see the corporation overseer who kind of almost the charter aspect was in charge of this new planet and the mining of whatever resources was on that planet. So I got that feel, and in some of the books as well, there's more of a presence of the business corporations and the guilds and the power that they had over these planets. So that was the feel I kind of got that this was either a banking clan colony or part of that old Republic CorpSec um, that I think later evolved into the separatist, some finance guilds, etc. So I got that kind of vibe from it.
Mm, okay. Lots of way people can respond to, hey, what's this remind me of? And you know, AP history for my junior year of high school is always with me, apparently. So here we go. Looking at Fern and Farah. So John wants to keep Fern around on his mission to go see the supervisor, and Farah goes along too, since one, it's her kid, and two, she's an undersecretary, so she's high up in the food chain. I did Fern get kidnapped immediately? And at what point does Farah become a kidnappee of Jod? And Your Honor, what are your thoughts on this?
I think in as much as Fern was at that point really never free to go, and nor was
Mhm.
Farah, that they were kidnapped by Jod, and falsely imprisoned by Jod as well, and in as much as they had to stay there on the penalty of being lightsabered, or the droids keeping them there. I believe they were kidnapped.
Chris, do you have thoughts on this issue?
Yeah, and I think it's interesting when you look at Farah because Fern knows that
Hmm.
she can't go anywhere and Farah doesn't. But I think even if Farah doesn't know, given how at least the federal kidnapping statute works out, since Farah is a government official and she was taken under false pretenses, and she later soon learned she can't leave under her will, that would automatically get him for kidnapping, even though he hasn't traveled across, state or planetary lines or anything like that.
Well, thank you. Well said. So this raises the question of, is a droid a person? And my question for you is, did Jod murder the supervisor or did Jod destroy the supervisor? Your Honor, your thoughts.
I think that the supervisor was aware, and you know this is a debate that'll be happening sometime probably in the next century as to when does an AI uh, get any rights, if ever. And we've done prior podcasts and other discussions on droids and their rights. But in as much as this droid was the legitimate authority running the planet and was at least appeared to be sentient, I would think that you arguably did murder the machine. But likewise, you can make a very easy argument that it's a machine, it's programming, and at most you are liable for the destruction of property without authority to do so. So at the very least, he destroyed property without any right to do so, and at most, he murdered a sentient being.
Chris, your thoughts.
I'll take it one th further. Not just that Jod murdered the supervisor. It was a assassination, and that Jod could be easily considered and eventually convicted of terrorism.
Oh, good thought, because that had political overtones to overthrow the government.
Yeah,
So
Hmm.
that's true. Very, I would agree with that as well, Chris.
yeah, well said, well said. All right, we have a pirate invasion. I mean, this was very Pirates of the Caribbean, the ride with the ship coming down, and they're not exactly tactical and how they start shooting at things. I mean, like, I'm glad they just didn't start opening up on houses because that would be problematic. But they do, aim at vehicles and the tram and other, again, private property, private and public property. So, first off, why is Neil's mom out with those siblings at night? That just struck me as a little weird. But so we have this pirate invasion. You know, Your Honor, how do you legally classify this?
This was an invasion. It was an act of war. They had no legitimate authority to invade this planet. They clearly started imposing their will on the citizens of the planet. They had a message sent quite clearly and early that we will kill you if you resist us. We will destroy your stuff if you resist us, and you better all do what we say. Uh, I got large feelings of the prequel and the Phantom Menace with the with the invasion, and this clearly was an unjustified taking of the planet and its citizens. So it was a pirate invasion and an act of war.
Chris, your thoughts.
Yeah, just like Judge Reno said, it's an invasion, an act of war, and they're doing it to enact at a minimum involuntary servitude and at most slavery, because they're forcing them to make the dairies gold. So uh,
I I I agree. I also think it's a bad use of resources because Jod didn't have to set up shop there. He
Hmm.
he could have just said, so there's 11,000 of these or 1,100. Sure, cool. I'll be back in a week and we'll see you guys soon. Now the problem is the kids would talk, but it's like this is fantastic. We got some needs. We're gonna make some runs here, as opposed to taking on management responsibilities. Now, the problem is they could fortify themselves and then protect themselves from further incursions. But one Onyx Cinder load for the pirates probably would keep them happy for a very long time. I'm not saying that these guys know how to go see financial advisors and learn how to, take care of their resources because they're pirates after all. They're going to get spend money on things that sailors shouldn't spend money on and get tattoos and waste money. But they could have had a good working relationship and they skipped it. So let's talk about Farah as the is it undersecretary or under supervisor?
Undersecretary.
Okay. So as an undersecretary and the death of the supervisor, did she have legal authority to make the call to drop the barrier? And this is a little on the executive side on being able to make decisions. I'll just say yes. We don't know their structure of government, where she is in the line of succession, but given what was going on, I think pulling the trigger to drop the barrier was the only logical choice she could have, because there isn't
Hmm.
any other one that ends with them in freedom.
We don't know how many other deputy supervisors there are, and if there's a
Mhm.
pecking order among the deputy supervisors. And even if she didn't have the authority, I think to destroy the barrier, she clearly was 100% justified in destroying the barrier because it was in order to save the lives and property of that planet. So even without the authority, she had an absolute justification to do what she did.
Chris, your thoughts?
Yeah, the question makes me think of the 25th Amendment and specifically Section 1. I think that if Farah is the next in line, then she would assume, granted there, I assume there's no swearing in ceremony because the supervisor has always been a droid. But I think in that situation, yes, she would become the supervisor, and so if anybody had the authority, it would have been her.
And if it's 25th Amendment or the Presidential Succession Act, because we're currently operating under the one from 1947. There might have been something after the Kennedy assassination besides the 25th Amendment. But like we have an order for, how the Secretary of the Interior ends up as the acting president if we're having a really bad day.
Hmm.
Um, you're how far down the line? What? Okay, that's terrifying. Uh, but it changes their society on a fundamental level. It literally brings them out of the dark. They can see stars for the first time in moonlight, but I do believe she had the authority to do so, because the other option was surrender to the pirates, and that's not good. Like that's not an acceptable answer to the situation they're in. So we have the New Republic come in, and the New Republic is actually effective good guys. There's no debate about, whoa, do we need to go save this planet that's been hidden for 1,000 years? They go in guns blazing as the heroes, which is how we like to think of ourselves as the country. Like we're the ones that we're the heroes, that we liberate death camps. We save people who are in need of being saving. And we have the New Republic with B-Wings uh come in and play hero. Did the did the New Republic have a duty to rescue At Attin? And Your Honor, uh, the honor's yours. Take the first shot.
Whether they had a duty or not is a maybe at this point. I don't think we really know enough as to um, any obligations between the Republic and this planet. There might be covenants that existed from the High Republic era, which did obligate the New Republic to come to their aid. And they came, like you said, really fast, which leads me to believe that this is a either a core planet region, a planet that's in the core region or in the mid region, as opposed to the outer rim. Because we saw in the Mandalorian series how long it takes the Republic to do anything that has to do with the outer rim, as
Mhm.
opposed to this more centralized worlds where they did take action a lot quicker. So it's either that, someone knows the value of this planet, which would have made some senators, or at least one senator, say, "Oh, we got to save this planet," um, or something else behind the scenes that got them there quick. And like you, I love seeing the B wings, especially with the triangulation of the laser shot from the animated series. To me, that was just when I saw that triangulation shot, I was just like, yes, that was so perfect.
It's just like, oh, they did the thing from Rebels. This is outstanding.
Hmm.
And they
Uh,
did a really good job, I think, of the special effects dealing with the X-Wings. The fight was really good. It was definitely a good dog fight, which is always what George Lucas aspired Star Wars to be. And yeah, I really like the space battle, or inner space battle, atmospheric battle, however you want to put it, between the X-Wing and the B-Wings and the pirate vehicles was really well done.
Chris, your thoughts on this?
It makes me think that At Attin is a territory of the Republic
Oh.
because it seems like they're Republic citizens, but they have no representation in the Galactic Senate that we know of. And
Mhm.
so, without having that, and presumably since the Republic didn't know they exist, they didn't pay any taxes. So I think as a territory of the New Republic that they did have a duty to rescue them.
Oh, that's okay. So it's like the Virgin Islands or Guam. Yeah.
Hmm.
Oh, that is fascinating. Uh, yeah, yeah, strategic importance, especially if you find out, hey, we have a secret bank account. Like, like that reaction is that generally will prompt action of, by the way, we're loaded, so let's make sure we don't get robbed. Uh, so some wild card issues. Neil gets to use a turbo laser. Neil takes multiple shots at the pirate ship. First one he hits their main cannon. Did our pure sweet boy Neil kill any pirates? Your Honor, does Neil have a body count?
There's a good chance with the power of that laser that there are some pirates that were on that ship uh, that were killed. It clearly is it's not something I think that we'll ever know for sure, but there's definitely the possibility that either directly or through collateral damage, that a pirate or two's life was ended by our cute blue trumped favorite.
Chris, how do you feel?
Uh, we will never know because that ship crashed because of the New Republic, and any damage that was done by Neil would probably been covered up by the crash or subsequent explosions from the New Republic fighter. So Neil does not have a body count. He is not guilty of any charges that would be brought up against him. He did nothing wrong.
Excellent. So we've touched on this already with how to describe at Attin legally, and Chris, your idea of it being a territory, I think, is brilliant. I mean, like our territories do have people in Congress represent them, but they don't get a vote. but like these folks have been completely without any representation for that hundreds, if not thousands of years. And I like the territory analysis. We have Wendell going George McFly. Again, this was just so beautiful of again, all of Wendell's arc here from hyper conservative dad of, he just like put a sweater on him. It's like, well, we better go hide. Oh, look, the power's out. Like that again, it's the disengaged 80s dad to remembers he does have a backbone. And from like, son, you're talking to a level 7 supervisor or level 7 systems coordinator. And he's just like, oh, it's so beautiful. But again, Wendell's arc as the dad who takes a punch at a pirate, that was everything. Everything, everything I enjoy about Star Wars. Did anyone else get a George McFly vibe from him?
I got it the second he gave that remark with the seventh level um, coordinator, supervisor, whatever he called himself. When he gave that line, right away I was in my head was Josh nailed it. That's
I,
exactly
I
what I said to myself. He
I got
called
it
it.
when the way he balled his fist and did the punch. I was like, that's just George McFly knocking out Biff.
Yep. You take your damn hands off her. It was that. It was just, yeah, it's a dad going, oh no, I am done with this. You're a jerk. No more. We're done. And the following fight was just great. Now I want to be sure that Farah gets her arc as well. I think she was more engaged with her daughter than Wendell was with Wim. And the loss of the mother, I think, was more recent. They're still processing what comes next. I think Farah had a better relationship with Fern. However, Farah is the one that helps pull the lever because without her, that critical moment would have passed.
Hmm.
So like she does have the realization, I got to do this too. So she has a character arc that where she steps up as well as the mom on the redemption arc. Um, Wendell had more of a hill to climb up. But man, when he starts, he doesn't stop. Uh, Mom does a good job of jumping in as well. Which brings us to some of the other just quick issues. Kim using the phrase two flaps. She's an owl. It made me think of the phrase about like two shakes of a lamb's tail.
Hmm.
And I was just like, okay, like so she's a bird. Like that's just like they're gonna her jargon and other terms of art that her species has is of course is going to be flight related. Like that just made sense. Uh KB doing the flight, lovely. Snowball riding on her head, super cute. Just I mean like all the kids get their hero moments to take action. Um, now,
And we got C, although not 100% back together, was at least able to participate in this finale.
Hmm.
yes, yes. I mean, though, again, if Smee goes home with KB, KB and her moms will get him back to working order, probably better than before. They'll probably take care of the peg leg. He'll probably get a good oil bath. He will be 100%. Maybe even have a second eye again.
I think he's going to be shine gold in season two. He's going to be, bright C3PO gold with all the melted Republic chips from vault number 17 or whichever vault they want to take some gold out of.
Yeah, yes. Just glorious. Uh, I do hope that KB and Neil get checked for concussions. That would be really smart for them to get some preventative medical care to make sure they don't have brain damage. So I would hope that happens. And uh, the and this was just so sweet, just so fun to see this. Uh, Now, does anyone want to defend Neil for going home and taking a bubble bath?
Hey, he hadn't been home in who knows how long. I don't blame him.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Your Honor, your what say
Yeah,
you?
I think Neil had earned his bubble bath, and you know he really had to some extent, yeah, a real challenge to his core beliefs. Um, and I think he needed some time to just to
Process.
decompress.
Yeah, I so you get home if they've been gone for a week, wearing the same clothes, going through all of the things that they went through, a shower makes sense. I am changing clothes, I'm getting clean because I need a moment because I've been in the same thing for a week and this is not okay. So I'm all for him having that self-care and kind of surprised the others didn't go freshen up either. So but I get the urge to say, Mom, we need to take care of this right now. That's a pirate. However, I support Neil with wanting to get cleaned up after all of their misadventures through, a mud spa to pirates and being in the brig and all of the other fights that they had to deal with. So totally on board. Totally on board. So as we're at the end of this, like what, like I'm curious to see how they get reintegrated, but I mean, this might be a perfect series. It leaves you wanting more, filled with joy. They just did a nice job. I mean, now, Chris, how do you feel at the conclusion of this series?
I think you hit the nail right on the head. I want more, not only just with these characters, but looking back, how did they get there? What about all the other planets? It also makes me think, okay, all right, if you want to hit 80s nostalgia, okay, hit 90s nostalgia next. Give me Star Wars meets Three Ninjas.
Oh my
Uh,
God. Oh, I've forgotten
I
about that.
I think it would be perfect. You can set it in the same time, have some Jedi that survived Order 66 that was like a master or something, married someone, settled down, and then his son-in-law, thinks Jedis are traitors, but he has three Force sensitive children, and yep, it'd work.
Your Honor, how about you?
I liked that we whether it's true or not, we also picked up a little bit of Jod's origin story to some
Yes.
extent, and it kind of makes sense that that actually was might have been a truthful story, as to how he got his knowledge of some of the way Jedi do things, and also at the same time why he is so cynical and hurt by the galaxy, and the other really amazing thing that I liked about the end of the series was the end credits, the the comic book panels that whether it came from Wim's little comic book reader or the vibe from the comic book reader, but those panels were just the artwork was gorgeous. Um, and it was I just a really nice way of summing up, like, these are the legends in the Star Wars universe, and those legends have impact, and they had impact on Wim throughout this story, both his realization that a lot of his beliefs are were total fantasies, but at the same time that some of those beliefs and some of those heroes do actually exist. And while he learned that the outside world is not necessarily the nicest place, it also there are great adventures out there to be had. And I think that that message at the end of this kind of series just fit it perfectly.
Well said. I've been thinking about how would I defend Jod from all of his misgivings to uh some of the larger issues of I don't think he wanted to hurt the kids. He threatened them, but he was also concerned about KB safety when the Cinder was crashing, and he effectively surrendered. I mean, he had the Force, he had a blaster, while Wim looked cool holding his, lightsaber, and Fern looked like someone who would throw a good punch. I like he still had the upper hand, and he threw his weapon down and gave up. So I don't think. I mean, I think his attachment is material wealth and wanting to never go hungry. And that's, again, he violated his own attachment rule because that was his undoing. But I think it's an interesting question of like, how do you defend Jod for his actions? And because again, it's a lifetime of bad decisions. And no one needs to answer that right now. But I think that's an interesting question.
If you're thinking about it for like down the road mock trials, uh, I think the way to do this one is in like the mitigation phase of a death penalty case, in that,
Yeah.
he's kind of, we know he's guilty, but he doesn't deserve the ultimate penalty because, and I think that would become an interesting issue with regards to the handling of Jod. Because yes, he clearly could have went down with a fight that would have killed a lot more people, and he chose not to. So there is something redeemable about him. Um, and he's also
Sentencing hearing.
clearly was messed up. I mean,
Yeah.
he had some deep issues from he had a really bad life, it seems.
I wonder if he would have ended up in that New Republic sort of prison system that the doctor ended up in The Mandalorian,
Yeah, where he could have been rehabbed and repurposed to another role.
Yeah.
or after they found out he was force sensitive, they called Luke and say, "Here, take him,
Yeah.
get us off his hands, or out of our hands."
Yeah. If we're supposed to be cool with your dad, work with this dude. Like, switch to again, the atonement question. Because again, this is my one of my questions with Star Wars is what happens life after being a villain. Now, generally, it's the animated characters that survive. So it's the Barriss or Ventress that stay alive after time as a villain. Here's the first live action that I can think of who survived at the end. Now, does he just go into hiding? Again, we don't see him get captured. We don't know what happens because you don't have to tie up everything with a nice little bow. But, does he go on an atonement arc? And what would that look like? Since I mean, watching the first episode, he did order that captain thrown out of an airlock. That be murder, my friends. And you don't just walk that off. It's like, how many people died because of you at your orders or, executing Brutus? I mean, it's one thing to argue that this under our pirate code, this is legal, problematic, still big picture, but what comes next for him? And I think those are interesting questions. So,
Maybe it was a soft spot really only for children, knowing what a messed up childhood he had.
Hmm.
yeah, I mean, he also spent time with them, and got to know them. And, I believe, watching the At Akron episode again, it's like, okay, this looks like real, like affinity for the kids. He saves them. He saves them from, the warring tribes and from Smee. He could have let them get rolled over, and he didn't. And so again, it just makes you wonder what a wonderfully complex character that podcasters and theologians and other scholars can write about for weeks on end. So, so with that, is there anything else for the good of the order? Hearing none.
Jude
Oh,
Law did a great job with
oh,
Jod,
Agreed.
and I think that it would have been a disservice to give him a part that wasn't as um, complex as they did. So and while the kids steal the show and were incredible actors, um, Jude Law, who we know from other things, is an incredible actor. It's nice to see that they gave him a part that he was able to shine in because we all know from some of the Star Wars shows, sometimes some of the great actors there's so much green screen and other um, effect that you really they don't get a chance to shine. And I think that while the show has some great effects, it really is about the characters, and they did a really really good job in flushing out and making you feel for each one of these characters.
yes. Which, and it's like thinking back to someone of the caliber of Peter Cushing, who I'm like, whether it was Van Helsing or Dr. Frankenstein and all the Hammer movies, like there was, or the, um, again, he had a long career, but like him as Tarkin, like he adds menace to Tarkin, and when you look at the amount of screen time he had, there wasn't a lot of that. Then so getting to see someone like Jude Law just swing for the fences with like, so what's this guy like? I'm in. And just he just goes for it. It's brilliant. Uh, Chris, any closing thoughts?
Yeah, I think this show hits on so many different notes for people that love Star Wars. Whether and I think it'll be a good jumping off point for parents to watch it with their kids and still hit some of the notes of Star Wars, even though you don't necessarily have Jedi in it, but you still have that theme of, there are good people everywhere, no matter how bad the galaxy gets.
Absolutely. Well said. Well, everyone, thanks for tuning in. We will be back for more. I can promise you there will be Daredevil coverage. So, but we got some time for that. But until then, everyone, stay safe, stay healthy, and stay geeky. Take care now.